Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. This is the Wednesday, December 18th, 2019 edition of our little weather get-together, show number 303. And tonight, we're happy to have Jim Cantore back with us. It's been a couple of years since we've had Jim with us, and it's always good to catch up with Mr. Cantore and kind of talk about weather and what all he's experienced. And that's kind of what we've advertised tonight. We're going to do a 2019 review. We're going to hit a few events, and then we're just going to kind of get into just a general conversation about some of Jim's weather stories. So we're happy to have you tonight. I do want to remind you this is the last broadcast for our 2019 season. So we're going to be taking a little break after this show to enjoy the holidays with our friends and family. And we hope that you will do that as well. So for the time, we want to maximize as much time as we possibly can. I'm going to bring in Mr. Shay Gibson, who was able to secure Jim. So, Shay, I'll kind of let you lead off and introduce our guest tonight, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely, yeah. So, Jim, once again, thanks for joining us. Jim's with the Weather Channel. He's been there for, I remember watching you back when I was in college. I mean, it's been quite a long time.
We started the 34th year, man, on July 14th. So. Yeah, we're in year 34 here. But I got to tell you right now, first of all, thanks for ending the decade with me, guys. We're ending the decade with me. I appreciate that. And obviously, by looking at Scotty's background, I need to up my my background game a little bit. So thanks for putting me in that position, Scotty. I appreciate that.
Sure thing. So, yeah, I can't match Scotty's background either.
I mean, you too, Shay. I mean, you're in the same boat I am. It's like, where is he?
Oh, well, Jim, I told you before the show, this kind of probably bring back memories, and we're going to talk a little bit about this later on, but this was the 2018 event, not far from where you were stationed. You were in Boone, North Carolina. I'm in the Morganton area, so about 30, 40 miles, but we'll talk about that about tonight, your stories about the snowstorm up in the high country. So I think I actually had the first question to lead off with you tonight, and we were talking about the 2019 year in review. And Jim, we were kind of racking our brain over some of the major events that happened. The first one that really came to mind for us was the severe weather outbreak that took place in Alabama and Georgia, Florida in early spring and March, with Beauregard tornado and just a crazy weather day. Talk to us a little bit about that. What's your memories or recollection of covering the weather that for that event?
I mean, with spring comes that chance. Dixie Alley's been hot, especially over this past decade. When you certainly think about 2011 and what happened down there. So not too surprising given the setup that we had that day. But guys, you tell me, was that our first EF4 in a while? Did we have the longest spread between EF4s? Was that with the tornado down there? I can't remember, but either way, it was a horrible day, and you knew, we were going to get a bad outbreak, and sometimes it happens, and we just had one the other day.
Yeah.
You kind of wake up in the morning, you're like, gosh, you know what? If this happens, or if we get this kind of instability, this is going to be one of those kind of days. So your whole tone changes a little bit on the air. So you kind of ramp up how you talk about it, and you slow down a little bit, and you say, you really need to watch this. And then you try and get in the timing. Okay, when's the initiation? Maybe, right after lunch, or not too far after lunch. And it really worked out. And as many people that beat up the HER model for its, over exaggeration, the HER did a great job with this event just the other day. So, my hat's off to the modelers. They don't get enough credit.
And Jim, it seems like, severe weather over the last few years has kind of been, I don't want to say on a downward trend, but not as widespread as, like you talked about, 2011 and events like that. We also saw a pretty active severe weather season in May, starting out in the mid-plains, especially the latter part of May. In fact, Evan and myself and Chris Jackson, we were out in the plains chasing for the last few days of May, and got to see some of those major tornadoes. But we saw tornadoes span from Colorado, obviously Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas. We even seen an EF4 tornado in the Columbus, Ohio area,
right,
in late May. So, for you guys there at the Weather Channel, I know that's kind of a time that you really do the severe weather awareness and tornadoes and things like that. So, that was a pretty big outbreak that we experienced this year.
Yeah, we had a lot of them that were like multi-day, and the atmosphere would reload. And it's been a while since we've had that. So that we expect that in the spring. We hope that it doesn't happen. And like you said, we had this kind of dry period where we've had some tornadoes, but they haven't been very strong. And so that changed this year in a lot of places, unfortunately. And as you guys know, with the stronger tornadoes usually come the more losses of life.
We saw that in Kansas City, and then the Columbus, Ohio area. I mean, that was, when you think of tornadoes, downtown Columbus, Ohio is not the first place that comes into mind, but an EF4 that went through that area. And it's just, I remember Evan and I, we were out, I think we were in Kansas or somewhere, and we were looking at the video of Evan, and we kind of looked at each other, was like, and we should have went to Ohio, but it was just, the photos and the videos coming out of, especially Columbus, it was just, it was kind of weird to see it there. Yeah,
and look at Dayton, the tornado that affected Dayton earlier. I mean, that was horrible. Hit a very good friend of mine's church. Her dad was the pastor there, and I mean, it just devastated, that whole town. But with that, guys, as you probably have seen out there, you see this kind of sense of community coming back together and helping everybody, and that's one of the, if there's a silver lining in this, that's it, and that's really the only thing. But I don't miss not being out on those as much as I used to be, because it's hard to see the heartache. It really is to go through that. But that's your job. You got to take everybody through it and show everybody, across the rest of the nation what these people have just gone through. I mean, and here we are, a week before Christmas, we've had, 3 EF3s, 6 EF2s in Alabama, Louisiana. So these people that were planning holidays with friends and family, all of a sudden, that's been completely blown out of the water. They don't even have a house, or the house has been so damaged it's unlivable. So we kind of forget. We get back in our house every night and we're all comfortable and cozy. The lights are on, the heat's on. But here are these people and their families and likely young children that, Santa Claus is going to have a tough place to land this year as a result of that,
And honestly, to make matters worse with the Dayton and Columbus tornadoes, I'm pretty sure those were nocturnal, if I'm not mistaken,
yes,
which just makes it worse.
Great point. We had a lot of overnight stuff this year, and that's the hardest. A lot of stuff that started going after dark. Texas, Oklahoma, some of those tornadoes early. I mean, it was a bad year for late day stuff. So you can't see them. You don't know they're coming. You're in your comfort zone in your house. And it's like, I think it's probably worse with these fires that we see in California, where all of a sudden, hey, you've got 30 seconds to get out of your house. Then you have to drive through the blaze to get out of it. If you make it through that, it's kind of like one of these things where you're just kind of settled in and comfortable. And all of a sudden, boom, to acknowledge and accept the fact that all of a sudden your life is being interrupted in an abrupt way. Boom. And you got to just do the best you can to get your family out of harm's way. There's no shortage of weather here in the United States, unfortunately. And a lot of times, and oftentimes it's severe weather.
Yep, none at all. So we go through the spring season and we start to get into the summer. We get 2019 tropical season, and that's
oh gosh,
the area I like to watch probably the most of all the weather events. So this year was a forecasted 16 named storms for NOAA. We hit 17, 6 of them hurricanes, 3 majors. The 3 majors, we had one that did significant damage to the Bahamas, and that was Dorian.
Oh my goodness.
That was definitely at a higher latitude than we thought something like that would have occurred. I mean, besides Joaquin, but kind of tell us your experience with Dorian and where did you start covering?
Well, I mean, we went to West Palm, Stewart, Jupiter, the Treasure Coast, because we thought we were going to get a strong hurricane to come in and stall over the Palm Beaches, which would have been an absolute disaster for the United States. But instead it came in, got stronger, and stalled over the Bahamas. So, in terms of for Florida, they absolutely dodged a bullet without question. And then certainly there was some issues up in Ocracoke and North Carolina as it accelerated and went over Hatteras Island. But still, I mean, at least it was moving. To have, I can't even imagine a Cat 5 stalled and just churning. And I can't even imagine what that was like going through for anybody that even survived that.
Yeah, you're talking 24.
We dodged one. And how ironic to dodge that monster and then have Imelda, which developed, all of a sudden we got a named storm within 15 minutes of a depression and a landfall 10 minutes after that. I mean, I slept through the whole thing, so I don't really remember it, to be honest with you. But, then to have it dump, prolific amounts of rain. So it's really these kind of, in the last few years, these slow moving, stalling storms that are producing these prolific rainfall totals. I mean, what do we had? Like 6 or 7 state records in terms of rainfall from tropical systems in the last 6 years. We've had 6 Cat 5s in the last 5 years. I mean, so we're in this kind of period of these ramped up, very strong cyclones. Very strong.
Yeah, it's really unnerving just how the setup is in the Atlantic Basin for the months of September, October in the last few years. It is maybe has a lot to do with maybe some of the jet stream pattern, but you don't have these sweeping cold fronts and these west to east traffic events going by that would sweep these things out. And so we end up with these weak ridges and nothing to really steer it away from the coast. And it just sort of just eases in. I mean, similar to Florence.
And Michael, look at did anyone expect Michael to be a Cat 5? No. Here, and I'm going to be honest with you. When I went to the coast for Michael, I was thinking, all right, I don't even need to bring my body armor. I think there's going to be a 2. I can probably make it through a 2 at the most. And all of a sudden, oh God, I made a huge mistake. I've got nothing. I got a 5 on my hands. We got a crew that's probably in a place that they shouldn't be. So we're getting them out of harm's way. I mean, that was crazy, man. That was crazy. But you're right. Just to take the last 4 or 5 years, and there's, like you said, the lack of steering and the slowing pattern and these prolific rain producers. And it's not just the United States. I mean, Hawaii. You remember, Hawaii got a record rainfall out of one of these. So it's happening,
Yeah, Hawaii keep getting skirted almost every single year now. It's just like, 4th consecutive year that we've had major hurricanes affect the United States or even territories. So we're like, look at rapid intensification on a scale that we're not quite used to seeing on some of these. I mean, we saw those in the early 2000s, maybe during El Nino years, where we would see some of these systems blow up. But it's just really wild. I mean, Dorian scraping the coastline. It came so close to Charleston. We really dodged a bullet with flooding. I mean,
you know what was crazy, and the Weather Service there does such a great job with their flood forecasting. What were they forecasting? The second highest flood on record, and all of a sudden, I remember going to bed tweeting about that because I was watching the gauge go up. I'm like, oh God, here it comes. It looked inevitable, and I wake up, and all of a sudden, no, they didn't even get close to the forecast. Mm-hmm. The wind shifted to offshore real quick, and it saved them from a massive flood in Charleston. So we dodged the Dorian bullet in terms of landfall in the Palm Beaches. We dodged the flood in Charleston because of the fact that the winds shifted offshore faster than they were forecast. So people just don't realize, Irma to me could have been an absolute disaster for the whole west coast of Florida, even Atlanta. I remember the European predicting 90-mile-an-hour winds in Atlanta with Irma. So we've gotten lucky. As bad as it's been, we've gotten lucky here in the United States.
Yeah, very much. I totally agree. And usually those south to north traveling systems that are actually intensifying, which Dorian weakened to a 2, but re-intensified to a 3 as it neared Charleston with those offshore winds. But as it swept up across North Carolina, they had some serious problems out of that.
Oh yeah, I mean
some of the wild horses got swept out to sea. I mean, there was significant flooding up there, and we're finding that more and more on the East Coast. We've had, Jared, I don't know if you can chime in. How many flooding events have we had this year that are not even tropical related? Something like 84.
Yeah, we're definitely into the 80s now. I've got to go back. I keep losing count. I mean, it's just
upper 80s.
Yeah, it's absurd, and it just this year just completely blows, like as far as flood days, just completely blows all of them out of the water. And like Shay said, a lot of them are on nice, sunny days, just sunny day flooding. And we're fortunate that we have some mitigations in place now, through the use of check valves primarily to at least keep some of the main roads from, getting overtopped in most of these events. If it goes 8 feet, though, I mean, check valves are overwhelmed at that point. You're just the water's just going to come over the road, and then that's it. So yeah, I mean, we have been, I feel like that we have said coastal flood advisory a lot this year. I'd be happy to not say that again for a while. I have a feeling we'll be saying that a lot more, though. There's gonna be an interesting time ahead, looking at even just the tide predictions in general. It's like looking at that is like, has something happened with the sea level? Because it's not just Charleston. I mean, this is happening all up and down the East Coast too.
Miami's obviously big. The Tidewater, people forget about the Tidewater. And when the U.S. Navy says, we're looking at mitigation for the Naval Air Base there. I mean, you got to listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
They're always ahead of the game and always ahead of the curve. So that's a hint right there that they're fully buying in to what's going on here. And you're right, we see it in the data, guys. It's right there.
It's just a super fragile coastline. It doesn't take very much. So now, even just a tropical storm, like even in Meldon, Texas, it's just bad news. Bad news. But either way, that's tropical season. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about with the tropics?
No. So I'm kind of wondering, today as we look at this kind of anomalous cut off but progressive low developing over the Gulf of Mexico that'll develop a surface low. Does this take on some type of subtropical characteristics to get at the name Tanya? So I'm kind of waiting to see how that all evolves with the Hurricane Center. And I mean, it looks like a cold core low to me, but you never know. I mean, there's going to be wind, there's going to be impacts for people traveling on the Florida Panhandle, certainly over the later weekend into Florida, even into Georgia. There could be some pretty heavy rain out of this. There's a tremendous tropical surge that this is going to tap into from the deep tropics. So, and I said this morning on a tweet, I'm like, with unusual weather patterns, you usually get unusual results. So I'm kind of like on pins and needles waiting to see how this all turns out this weekend. Hopefully it'll be nothing, but we're watching it for sure.
I want to loop back real quick to the Charleston conversation, just because I know, myself, Jared, and Shay all live in Charleston, and it's amazing how desensitized we've become. I mean, over the past 4 years, we've had 4 mandatory evacuations in downtown Charleston, and sunny day flooding happens several times a month. It's a little bit scary because at some point, when do people stop paying attention to, it's just one more mandatory evacuation? And we haven't been slammed since Hugo. We got lucky in Matthew and Dorian and all the storms of the past few years. But it's really only a matter of time, which is a terrifying thought.
Well, if you go look at the 20 highest tides in Charleston, aren't they all like in the 2000s now? Or, I mean...
They had a huge one was it November, Jared, when it crested up at like 8?
Well, I remember 2016 was huge. I mean, you had all sorts of high tides in 2016.
I think
that was a big year.
Still has the record. 1993, the winter storm. There was that bomb low that came up the coast, and it really surged it up. So I have to go back and look. But that's a good question on the highest tide. I think 1993 still tops it, but then again, surge and tidal fluxing, there's some difference, there's disparity there in what the reports are. But interesting question.
Yeah, Hugo is still number one as far as like the just gauge readings.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, but Jim, you're exactly right. I mean, the vast majority of these, I got it pulled up here now. Yeah. I mean, all of the recent crests, all of the recent high crests, the top 10 ones are 2015, 2016, 2017, 18, 19, 3 of them, 3 8-foot tides this year. I mean, that's just getting crazy on us. And I think the one thing, Evan bringing up the evacuations and the flooding. There was no evacuation for Irma yet. That could have been very justified based on the fact that that was our, that was our third highest tide on record, 9.92 feet. I mean, that was
that was crazy, guys. You've got a hurricane, a weakening hurricane on the west coast of Florida, but yet you've got massive tidal flooding up the northeast coast of Florida and South Carolina and Georgia. So, wow, yeah, that one still gets me as to how incredible the reach was with that storm. Even though it was barely 100 miles an hour by the time it got north of Fort Myers, if it was even that. So that was a crazy storm, and I'm going to tell you, Dorian was my 100th tropical system that I had been out on for the Weather Channel. Okay, whether it be depression or storm or hurricane, anywhere in the world, that was my 100th one, and they're all different. They are. There's nothing that is any way, shape, or form the same way. So I feel sad sometimes when I hear people say, well, this one's only a 1 because I left for the 3 and that wasn't so bad. But yet all of a sudden you get these massive floods, and there's so many different aspects of hurricanes and tropical systems that people just don't understand. So you can't base your decisions on leaving on categories. There's so much great work that's been done at the Hurricane Center and the emergency management local on the local level of getting people out. So when they issue the evacuation warning, just realize there's so much that's gone into that. They're not just trying to make your life harder. They're actually trying to get you out of what is a potential flood situation that could ruin your home, ruin your life. Believe me, that's the one thing. If we can just get people to understand the work that's gone into that, Jamie Rome at the Hurricane Center and all the emergency managers. I mean, that's the hardest thing, is getting people out of harm's way, because they compare other storms, and you can't do that.
And one more thing on that point before we jump off to decidedly more fiery topic. But it's like, Matthew was a 2, Matthew was a 3. I rode that out and it was fine. It wasn't a 3 at your location. It might have been a high-end tropical storm at your location. Right. That 3 is going to be in a very small place, but what you got was still tropical storm force winds, and that should make everybody nervous. Like, we only had tropical storm force winds for the most part in Dorian here. There were a few hurricane force gusts, but I was out of power for a day and a half. So, and I got lucky. There are people who are out of power for several days, and it's like, that's just, that wasn't that bad of a storm, but think of all of the, just the inconvenience, if nothing else. And maybe that's how we need to go about it.
Yeah, it's all about the impacts. And I think once people can see, how high the water could get, and obviously storm surge forecast is a worst case scenario. It doesn't always happen to be the worst because of different perturbations in the system, but we have to forecast the worst case scenario, because when that does happen, and if we don't forecast it, then it's a disaster, and we're not doing our job as servants. So we're going to always forecast that, and that's what we're going to prepare you for, and that's what you need to prepare for.
It would be interesting to see if the Saffir-Simpson scale is supplemented somehow, or the category of storm is designated per flooding event, and see if any change occurs with that. So we'll be watching. Lots of talk in the air about it. But we're going to switch topics here. We're gonna go into California wildfires. So some interesting wind events this year. We're talking Santa Ana winds, El Diablo winds, and how that is forced down from the higher levels up above the Sierra Nevadas down through the valleys. And so what is your experience with working in that type of environment, working to cover that environment at a safe distance, of course, but what's your experience with that?
I mean, I don't usually cover the fires for the Weather Channel, but I've actually been out to train with CAL FIRE on a prescribed burn. And I'm like, guys, listen, I want to go through, I don't want you to make this easy. It was a hot day. I mean, if I have to stop and fall to the ground because I'm exhausted, I want people to see just how exhausting this is to come out and fight these fires. And the speed, what I remember the most is the speed at which these fires can move. and how even when you think you have part of the fire out, it can still be going even though you doused it. It's amazing to me. So when we're getting winds at 60 to 80 miles per hour, you're talking about an uncontrollable fire. All right. And so it's creating its own weather. Now it's got a life of its own. It is not controllable. So whether it's fuel or wind driven, whatever it is, I mean, the campfire comes to mind, people at the last minute getting out of harm's way. And there were so many that did not. They still haven't found remains of these people. I mean, that's how incinerated they were. So, it's just crazy. But here's the deal at the end of the day. This is a part of our history. Back before we started suppressing fires, you could get 20 to 30 million acres a year that burned. It's just a way of the forest. And what we've done is our love of the wildland interface has moved us closer and closer into this danger, so that we do have heat waves and droughts and big winters that produce prolific growth of the underbrush that dries out in the fall almost every year. Now we've kind of all of a sudden this beautiful land that we've moved into, this interface that we've tucked ourselves up into, is now a potential inferno should conditions come to fruition. And that's what we've seen with these fires. So have we moved too far into what we love? Have we gotten too close to the beast that could be, with the beauty and the beast? You know what I mean? Sure. I think we have. So, but if we're going to get that close, now it's like, okay, look, if I'm going to go put myself in there, I'm going to have a home that is resistant to the type of disaster that I'm moving in. Do I have a roof that's flammable? Do I have siding that can take higher heat? Do I have windows that won't melt? In other words, can I shelter in place as this type of fire goes over? And they make products, they make homes, and yes, they're more expensive. But I think if you want to move into paradise, whether it be on the coast or in the wildland interface of the West, you have to build to your natural disaster. That should be the minimal. Because, you see these firefighters go in there, they put their lives at risk to try and save your home, to try and save you, when we should have been in there. Maybe we shouldn't have been in there in the first place. I don't know. But if we can build a place to shelter in place during a situation like that, or do as best as we can, then that's really where we should start from, I think, if we're going to go that far into the forest. I mean, jump in.
Yeah, I think we saw a great example of that in Michael last year in Mexico Beach, Mexico City. No, Mexico Beach, that's the one, yeah.
Mexico Beach.
Where that house was left standing and it barely looked like it had been touched by the winds when everything around it had been completely destroyed. So
yeah, so that this was a guy who decided to build above code. All right. So remember, code is always the minimum standard. So you can always build above that. You can always do better than that, depending on how much money you want to spend. And that was kind of an older area of the Florida Panhandle. So a lot of those homes have been there. They've been passed down and whatnot. But, going back and rebuilding, why not use that as an example of how we need to build Mexico Beach? All right. Because who wants to come back to that kind of catastrophe? Nobody. Everybody pays for that. Everybody.
And even to bring that back more locally, this is technically Tennessee, but the Gatlinburg fires, 2 years ago now, 3 years ago? I mean, that was horrifying. That's just right at the base of the Smokies. That's a terrible place for a fire, but it wasn't ready because it's so rare that fires become widespread in Western North Carolina nowadays, that it just didn't seem like a conceivable, a phenomenon that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, think about how many videos we've seen, guys, in the last 5 to 8 years of people driving through embers and trees that are on fire and barely making it out alive. And some do not. We don't see those videos. We don't see the ones where people don't make it out. So, I mean, just a horrifying situation. But trust me, I love the mountains as much as anybody. I love being up there, but you gotta make sure that you can either shelter in place or build yourself a structure to do that, or have a way out should the worst come.
Okay, one more for me. I'm gonna pass it off to the team. We talked about a lot of disasters. I want to kind of get into something that's a little more fun, something that you like, something that fascinates Jim, and I know what that is, and it's thunder snow. And you just kicked me a picture earlier, or a GIF from Radar Scope, and showing some of that up in the New York area. And we know that you get excited about it. So tell us your experiences with thunder snow. What causes it? What kind of drives you for that?
I mean, it's thunderstorms. It's thunderstorms above cold surface air. It's the same, rapidly rising air, differences in charge, and boom, you can get it. And I think, people are saying, oh, we're getting more thunder snow these days. And I don't know. I don't necessarily believe that. I think what's happening is we're getting more people with cameras that are aware of thunder snow. So you're getting more pictures of it. And I think as forecasters, we've done a good job in knowing some of these weather systems that can produce dynamic snow. Like all morning this morning on AMHQ, I was just jacked about the potential for, because it's interesting because, the producers, they write about the lake effect. And I'm like, guys, this isn't about lake effect. This is about what's going to happen downstream in the big cities, potentially at the time of rush hour, people coming home. So you've got these, intense snow squalls. And the Weather Service, by the way, did a great job. Everybody was aware of this. We had snow squall warnings from New England all the way down into Maryland. Okay, there may still be some out there. I don't even know. But down to Cape Cod, the last one I saw, was south of Providence. So these are just crippling. They're like going through a severe thunderstorm, but with whiteout conditions, you can't see the road. And yes, can they be dynamic enough to produce thunder and lightning? Absolutely. But it doesn't happen that often. I don't think people are used to snow squall warnings, but I'm wondering if today we actually saw more snow squall warnings than we ever have out of any given situation, because there was several of them.
Hey, Jim, to chime in there, Greg Diamond, which I believe is one of your producers, he tweeted out at some point today, it was the 4th most trended hashtag on Twitter today was snow squalls.
Really?
So
Interesting.
there you go.
So yeah, that didn't come from just the Weather Channel saying it this morning on AMHQ and describing what they are. It was also the local media and the national media and the National Weather Service. So the whole weather enterprise was totally onto this. It was very well forecasted. It was modeled out, and it just so happened to verify. And it happened at the time when everyone's coming home from work in New York City. It happened right over New York City. So it's kind of an exclamation. We don't always get the weather right there, but when we do, man, it feels good. It feels good.
Now, Jim, is there any specific thunder snow event that sticks out in your mind?
Peter, there is. The Plymouth Mass event was incredible because I was supposed to be, in Boston, and they wanted us to move down to Plymouth because the conditions were going to be a little worse there. And we were just so tired from literally living in Boston that record year of snow. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Let's get down to Plymouth. That's going to change the scenery. And sure enough, that turned out to be the spot because I saw Reynolds get it at about 5 o'clock and I was crushed. I was crushed because I wasn't up in Boston getting it. I'm like, I just missed a Thunder Show episode in downtown Boston. So I literally put my face down in the snow and I just laid there for a second. And I came back up. I didn't even wipe my face. And if you look at the video, you'll see like snow underneath my goggles and on my beard and whatever, because that literally my face was down in the snow because I was so demoralized. And then once we got it, I went from the lowest of lows to the highest of highs. And then we got another reps. And then we got a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth strike. And it was just incredible. It was just incredible. And, granted, these are dangerous ground stroke lightning flashes, but I don't know, man. It's just, there's something about it. I just love being out in it. I love when it happens. It's so dynamic. I mean, it's a damn thunderstorm in the snow. So it's awesome.
Like it's the perfect segue because last December you were in Boone for the big snow event up there, and we
Yes.
actually had thunder snow at UNC Asheville. Did you guys have any of it up in Boone?
If we did, I didn't hear it.
Bummer.
Yeah, I wasn't out at the time it happened. That's the other thing too. It's kind of nice when there's a camera running and you're in the middle of a live shot and it happens, so you can kind of capture it right there and you can prove to everybody what actually happened. But yeah, Boone was incredible. I mean, we had so much snow in a short period of time. It was a heavy snow, beautiful snow, and I remember getting a text from my good friend, NASCAR champion Bobby Labonte. He's like, "Hey Jim, my daughter goes to Appalachian State. She'd love to come down and say hi to you." And I remember Madison when she was like yay big, and now she's an adult going to school. So that was a kind of another little cool part of covering the storm up there.
And I think you had the Boone stick, the snow stick, right?
I had the Boone stick. I just had this yardstick that I'm like, we got to call this something. It can't just be. It's like a Boone. It's the Boone stick. So people were, for some reason, that hashtag kind of caught on, and we watched the snow just climb on the Boone stick. It was awesome.
If I'm not mistaken, you helped kick off the Christmas parade too, right? It was the Christmas parade.
Yeah, all of a sudden the next day we're covering the aftermath, and I'm in the middle of the street, and the Christmas parade must go on, so it went on. And I'm like, well, let's just make this a part of our shot. And guys, that's what it's really all. You take away the flood and the tornado and the hurricane, and those are very hard to cover as a reporter, as a meteorologist. But there's something about the snow that's a little bit easier. You know what I mean? It just, people have to do something really wrong to not do well in a snowstorm. It's a lot more fun. I think it brings out the kid in everybody, and you see dogs jumping around. You see everybody having a snowball fight. I mean, it's just fun to be out in the snow. And I think, with the Christmas parade and what was going on up there, it was just good to kind of portray that fun. It wasn't about a disaster or a record-setting snowfall anymore. It was about having fun in the snow and pushing people out. I was at the chiropractor office for about a week and a half after that. It was brutal.
You talk about that. For those who may not be from the Southeast, where we're all originated at, snow kind of slows everybody down here. It kind of shuts the city down. And
I get it.
In my opinion, I think it's good family bonding time, or you get alone, you get with your kids or your neighbors, and you get to have these snow events and eat. And we complain about we shut down and everybody makes fun of the South, but it's a good thing in my opinion because it brings a lot of people together.
Where else could you pull out the Monopoly board again?
Right.
The cribbage board, the checkers, the chess, the backgammon. I mean, you get all that stuff out. The Twister. You pull out Twister, and everybody can have a good time. So I agree with you. It is a good bonding time for sure. And, there's even some neighbor helping neighbor in these kind of events. They're out brushing off the snow. They're shoveling the driveway for the elderly folks. There's just a lot of good that comes out. I rarely do a snowstorm where I've just got this frown on my face because we've just lost so many lives. Now, granted, the big nor'easters, when we have tremendous overwash and flooding and coastal mass, those aren't fun. They're brutal. But when it's just snow and it's a nice, like we were in Kent, Connecticut a couple years ago in the beautiful Litchfield Hills, and this just gorgeous Currier and Ives snow, 4 inches of white fluff just flocked all the trees. It was beautiful. I mean, you can't help but get a good feeling from a snowstorm like that. The sun comes out the next day. It's bluebird. You ever been in Colorado or Utah or California? I mean, it's just incredible.
I agree. One thing I always want to ask you, Jim, I don't think we talked about this the last time you were on. You just said earlier in the program you've been with the Weather Channel for 30 plus years. From the starting time to what it is now, talk a little bit about the Weather Channel and the progression that you guys all as a whole have made for the weather community. I mean, I think if you ask all of us panelists at one time or another, when we were kids, we weren't watching cartoons, we were watching the Weather Channel. So kind of talk about the progression of the Weather Channel and what all, I mean, you've seen it grow from the start to where it is now.
Wow, that's an interesting question. The late, great Dave Schwartz. Do you remember Dave?
Yes.
best personality ever on the Weather Channel. What him and I sat down and calculated one time how many minutes we were actually on air. And we thought, okay, it's like 25 minutes. We're actually talking an hour and we're on for 4 hours. So, 100 minutes, we're talking for 100 minutes about the weather, which was really cool. Because back in the days, that's what it was all about, the weather, 24/7. All right. That's what we did. We had to stack our own show. If we wanted to put a segment that had 15 visible satellite loops in it during the afternoon, we could do that and just talk about it. Now it's, it's a little bit more structured. It's a little more newsy. There's video mixed in. I mean, it's better. There's news stories. There's climate stories. There's people stories. There's interviews. People will tell you what kind of insurance you need, those kind of things. And one of the most recent things that we've done is this immersive mixed reality. So if you guys, you saw me out there with these, going through the EF scale or going through an ice storm. All right. I mean, that is really kind of amazing how that works, because you've got a ton of people involved. You've got a jib operator. You've got a guy who's running teleprompter. You got another person who's advancing the graphics. You got the talent out there. We all have to turn in the right way. So you have to do this over and over again until it all is synced up. But it really is, to me, kind of it's weather in 3 dimensions. It's a way to really show everybody what's happening in 3D, because we all know weather is that, right? So now it's like, well, why not do that on a daily basis? Why can't we do that with our daily programming, with radar, with video? I mean, why not show a real-time shot of Nashville with the radar superimposed on that coming toward Nashville? What would that look like? So right now, as we speak, we are building this huge wall at the Weather Channel to literally transform the way that we present weather in this immersive mixed reality type format. So it's going to be really cool. It's going to be a game changer. It's what I expect from my company. So I'm totally stoked about it. We mixed that in with what we're doing right now. And I can't wait to see how this all, I mean, they got the sheetrock up. They're just about to get the wall painted green. So yeah, I'm psyched.
Sounds really cool. And I'll toss it off to other guys after this. What I think the Weather Channel is most known for, and what a lot of people see you when they're not watching AM HQ, is the wall-to-wall coverage you guys, I mean, far beyond anybody else, any of the other major news outlets. You guys do, when we have winter weather events, hurricanes, the wall-to-wall coverage that you provide is phenomenal. And just, I know there's so many people involved in making that happen. And it's a 24-hour thing. I mean, you guys, especially with hurricanes hitting, you guys are all on the air nonstop.
Dude, that's our Super Bowl. All right. I mean, Scotty, that's our Super Bowl. You got to show up for your Super Bowl. You got to play all 4 quarters. You can't lay down. I don't care what the lead is. You got to keep going until the end of the game. So that's how we look at it all the time. I mean, there's people out there. We are servants to those people. They're watching us. They're making decisions about themselves and their families. So you have to deliver. You have to deliver a message that they understand, a message that they can prepare themselves with and potentially save their lives. So that's just going to go on and on. We ask you, I've always thought, for me personally, you know what? I'm standing out in the middle of this thing. Jim, well, why do you get to stay and we have to leave? Because you have to leave. I know this is what I do for my job. And I always think if the least I could do is take people through it when they're watching us from a safe haven off in the distance and show them what's actually happening back here. And so, we have tons of teams in the same spot near the eye, so people can get a real good idea of what's actually happening back here. And here's the deal, guys. There's times when we got to come down out of our shots because it's just not safe. But we try and get in a position where we can be protected and protect everybody on the team and do the best we can. I mean, it's not a panacea. There's no perfect spot out there. I mean, it's dangerous when the wind starts blowing like that, but if we can get the shot up, we want you to see what it's like going through a Cat 1, 2, 3, 4 hurricane.
So Jim, humorous question for you. How does it make you feel when you show up and everybody runs?
Oh, jeez. I mean, if I show up, I was in I was helping to host an event down in Grand Cayman, and I was in a tuxedo, and I was walking through a hotel down there in a tuxedo, and this lady looks at me and she comes up, she grabs my arm, she goes, "Oh, Jim, please don't tell me something bad's about to happen." I'm like, "Ma'am, I'm in a tuxedo. I'm not going to go cover bad weather in a tuxedo." And I just, it's kind of weird that kind of follows me around. But you know what? If it gets attention going, especially when I'm not in a tuxedo, which I'm usually not, then so be it. That's a good thing for everybody. But it's a nice attention getter.
I just had to ask.
Al Michaels called me Dr. Doom one time, and it kind of stuck with me. So yeah. I'll take it.
I think you even had a commercial at one point where it was just you're
just
going to the beach to sit down and chair and relax, and everyone just clears out. It's quite funny.
That was so fun to shoot that. We shot that in Wilmington, North Carolina, probably about 8 years ago. We played it for like 1 year on the Weather Channel, and then we took it away, and it showed up on social media and went viral. And the funnest part about that commercial was the dog. I just couldn't stop laughing that they could command the dog to bark at me. So I'm just like, guys, I can't get back into character here because this dog is just, I can't believe you can make the dog bark on command. So anyway, finally we got it, we shot it, but that was the funnest part of that thing. And then everybody running on the beach, and that was fun. That was fun.
I think it's so fitting. I'm going to tell a little personal story. We started the decade back in 2010, and I was a little 9-year-old with my little weather book.
Oh,
I know, I was a little tot. But I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and early 2010, we had a snow event where we actually saw thunder snow. It was amazing and definitely kicked off my love for the weather, that and then Sandy a couple of years later. But I think it's pretty fitting that we're closing off the decade with you, Jim, and telling us the stories about your, up in Massachusetts with the thunder snow and all the different videos that I've seen on the internet, of you losing it over thunder snow. And I can totally relate to that because that's what all of us weather nerds like to do.
9 years old. Wow. Okay.
I know.
Even older now. Gosh, what was I 9 years ago? Anyway, so Worcester in '96 was the first event. So I don't even think you were around then, but you were around in '96?
I was not.
No, you were not. Okay, so that was the first event. We had Chicago twice, Harrisburg, Plymouth, Mass. I mean, just to be able to be out in it when it happens. So now it's like, I don't even care if somebody gets 2 feet of snow. I want to be out where the thunder snow is going to happen. I want to be in that spot where the thunder snow is going to be. So I get it, man. And I'm glad you caught the weather bug.
Oh yeah, yes sir.
I don't think we've even asked you that. What gave you the weather bug? What sort of got you?
The blizzard of '78. Plus, just always, I can't just put it on one storm because I just always wanted to be out when it was pouring rain or snowing like crazy. And growing up in White River Junction, Vermont, we had that tremendous winter of '77, '78. Of course, the grand finale was the blizzard of '78. So we had another 30 inches of snow on top of whatever we had. And I mean, as a kid, think about this. You're walking around as like a 14-year-old kid with like snow up to your chest. It's like, this is unbelievable. So we had this wonderful house on Taft's Flat where my brother and I were responsible for shoveling off the overhang, which hung over the walkway around the house. And it was flat, so you had to take the weight off of that. And so we were like, oh my gosh, we're going to create this great big pile. And so we created this 12-foot pile of snow from shoveling off the roof. And so he jumps in. We did rock, paper, scissors to see who goes in first. He won. So he jumps in. He disappears. I'm like, oh my God, Vinny. Vinny's my brother, Vincent. So I jump down in there and I uncover him. He's about 2 feet down, but we would have lost my brother in that from the blizzard of '78 if I hadn't jumped in after him. But that's how much snow we had. I mean, it was just incredible. But I'll never forget that event. It was like you lived in snow tunnels. The roads that got us to our house were like the mounds of snow were so high. It was like being in a snow tunnel. It was incredible. It really was. So that's if you want to put it on one event, it's definitely that.
Do you have a favorite moment from the decade?
Wow, favorite moment, weather moment, or just moment?
Weather moment, although if you have a favorite moment you want to share, sure.
Guys, I got to be honest with you. Tuscaloosa, I'll never forget the outbreak in 2011. That was amazing in Tuscaloosa because I've never seen a mesocyclone moving away that was twisting and was black. So as it was leaving Tuscaloosa and heading up toward Birmingham, I will never forget that image. It was like something evil happening. So that in terms of weather moments, that's the one. It was early in the decade. But in terms of wow moments for what I do, I got to fly with the Blue Angels again, which was awesome. And I love the fact that kids want us to be their wish for Make-A-Wish Foundation. And this little girl named Kaylee, just a couple of weeks ago, we were her wish. And she's a really young girl, and she had ovarian cancer at like 6 years old. She's a survivor, though. And she's so full of life and so in love with the weather. I don't think I've ever met a more passionate person in my life about the weather. Seriously. And here's this now 9-year-old, but she's just so alive and excited about the weather and to be there. But, we had a big day for her planned. We all went up to the front door to meet her when she was coming in. And we were supposed to go up to this other room and meet her and get away from the crowd or whatever. I'm like, I'm going to the front door. This is this girl's day. I want to see her when she comes in. So she comes in and I'm just standing there, clapping like everybody else. And all of a sudden she just comes running up to me and gives me this great big hug. And that was just the most wonderful thing, man. That's my favorite moment of the decade. And usually I can handle all the traumatic weather out there and the worst that Mother Nature can muster up. But that was a tough one. And I can promise you this, that girl made more people's days than we made her day. I'll tell you that right now. So Kaylee, I'll always remember that.
I don't know how we can top that. That's a great story. Jim, thank you so much for spending some time with us. We always love catching up with you, and thank you for the work that you put into the Weather Enterprise. And I know we all look up to you, and we appreciate your service, and we're just appreciative that you are willing to spend a little time with us. And we want to wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and we hope that I know you're itching to get back out in the field, so hopefully you can get out there soon.
Yeah, this mild end to the decade, I don't think is going to last into the new decade. So we'll be back out there. But guys, thanks for having me. Remember, I always want to say this: we're all a part of this team, the Weather Enterprise. We're all kind of in this together. So let's lift each other up a lot, because we're all servants together, right? At the end of the day, and that's kind of how I look at it. So thanks for having me. Seriously, thank you.
Definitely. So Jim Cantore, everyone, go follow Jim on Twitter. A great follow, and be sure to tune into the Weather Channel. And Jim, thank you so much again. I was looking through our notes. I think we may have a little bit of time, Jared, if you want to do weather news, or you want to skip that and we can go on.
I mean, I had weather news about a new interstate. I don't know how we can. I don't think we can follow that. Yeah, I mean, it'll evacuate people from Carteret County, North Carolina, and that's really good. We need that sort of thing. They're upgrading U.S. Highway to I-42, but you know what? I don't know that I can follow that. So. I will quickly say that we have a new nominee for NOAA administrator, Dr. Neil Jacobs. He's the acting administrator of NOAA right now. Came into some heat with the whole Sharpie Gate thing earlier this year, but
I was at NWA during that. I remember that. That was a tough moment for everybody. Talk about the elephant in the room, but I actually think that brought us together more as an enterprise. Because Span is just this phenomenal cheerleader. He gets up and tells it like it is, regardless, and it's great to hear when he does that. And everybody kind of rallies around that. And the Weather Service in Birmingham So that was a good moment for us, even though at first it was bad, but it wound up to be, I think, a great moment for the enterprise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good
He's
for
a local
Neil,
boy.
actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's a local boy. So he's from Somerville. He's just from up the road from here. He went to North Carolina State, so went to NC State, so a nice Carolina connection with this new nominee. About a month ago or so, Barry Myers, former CEO of AccuWeather, dropped out of consideration. He'd never received a vote on the floor of the Senate, dropped out due to health concerns. So we have a new nominee. He's in the job now. Seems to be doing very well. Brilliant modeler, great scientist. So we will see if he gets that up or down vote. We'll find out. And then finally, just one last little thing. We had an earthquake in Colombia this past Saturday. First noticed it with our buddy Chris Jackson. He was like, "What was that boom?" on Facebook, and sure enough, a couple days later, it gets found to be an earthquake. Initially scored a 2.5 magnitude, now revised down to a 2.2 after a little further analysis. Residents said it sounded like a boom, a little shake, and then they went on with their day. But still, this is not California, and any sort of earth-shattering event like that, no matter how small, will kind of rattle everybody's cage, so to speak. We've got to bring some of the NASCAR terms for you guys. Jim, we've got your race cars in the background. I can't do you wrong there. I mean, I think your background's a lot cooler than mine.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, I'm not really a huge NHRA fan, but I watch it, But the fact that they have Yankee insignias on them, it's really about the Yankee insignia more than I'm a huge Yankees baseball fan. So, to watch Garrett Cole sign with the Yankees was my Christmas present. That was my Christmas present.
No doubt.
You notice, Jim, I got my Charlotte Motor Speedway shirt on. So
I do see that.
Anytime you want to come out to Speedway, you let us know. We'll definitely.
Guys, my Charlotte Motor Speedway memories go back to Humpy Wheeler.
Yes.
So if you know anything about Charlotte Motor Speedway, you go back to Humpy Wheeler. He was always so great to us, and
one of the greatest promoters ever.
Yeah, genius.
He was. I know James is going to fuss at me. We got 7 minutes to do this. Jim reminded me of this. This is the last show of the decade. So I want to ask each of the panelists, and we'll even let Jim have another opportunity if he wants. What's been your most memorable weather moment for this last decade? I'll start with Peter because he's the first one on my screen.
Oh, thanks.
There you go.
So I would say maybe there's two for me. 2009, 2010. We had these big snowstorms all the time in the Northeast. Those are some big ones. Got me off of school a lot, so that was great. And then this past summer, we had all the record tornadoes here in New Jersey. 9 tornadoes, which was pretty nuts. So, yeah, this has been an interesting decade with just blizzards and tornadoes. And we had Hurricane Sandy and Irene in there, too. So it's been a memorable one for no doubt.
All right, Jared, you're next on my screen. So.
Yeah, I think I got 2 as well. I mean, so from the scary department is the 2015 EF2 tornado that formed just in the dead of night over Johns Island, South Carolina. And I was admittedly dozing off a little bit when that guy perked up. And then my wireless emergency alerts went off, and it was like, oh, crap. So wireless emergency alerts, 1, are amazing. 2, dual pole right. Made the warning very effective. Some great forecasting work by the National Weather Service in Charleston that night. They had actually mentioned in the AFD that there was the potential for maybe a tornado along the Charleston County coast. How prescient was that? Some outstanding work. Pattern recognition by the Weather Service. Nobody was killed. It was a nighttime tornado, very unusually strong for this area. Nobody was killed. So that was a little scary as I had a tornado debris signature barreling toward my house. I hope I never feel that again. But it all lifted by the time that it got near here. So that was good. But by far my favorite one was the snowstorm of 2018. Jim said it perfectly. there is just nothing better than a snow event, especially in a place that doesn't get them. So, to see everybody, just like Scotty said, just coming together, having some fun with it. It wasn't fun about 4 or 5 days later when the freezing rain event that had happened before started rearing its head on the roads. But it was the thing that I will always take away from that was how quiet it was. Even you just had the snow and you had a little bit of wind, but there was no air traffic. This is Charleston. The best we have is an S10 with a shovel on front, right? And you just hope for the best. So the airport was closed for several days, and it was just so quiet, and nobody was driving, nobody was out and about, and it was just I will never forget that. And I got to say, I'm rooting for another one of those personally. I could do snow. I could do a fun little conversational snow event every once in a while and have a good time with it. Lots of hurricanes, lots of flooding, as we talked about earlier, but those are the two things that really stand out for me, Scotty.
Those are good memories. Evan, you're next.
Well, that's kind of tough. Definitely the thunder snow that I mentioned earlier is up there. I missed Sandy. My dad went to Beach Mountain with my grandparents, and he knew I was a little burgeoning weather nut, but he left me behind at school in Charlotte. So I missed that, which really egged me on to get to see the next one. But I think all in all, it would have to be either seeing the Tipton, Kansas tornado that we were at this year. That was, for all intents and purposes, the first major tornado I had ever seen, and that whole experience blew me away. And if not that, my love and passion for Northwest Flow snows. As anyone who's been listening to the podcast for a while, y'all know that I'm the nut that's always tweeting about the high winds on Grandfather Mountain, or the snow that's coming in. I spent a lot of days doing, as Shay would call me crazy for saying this, but running up to the tops of the mountains just to see the blizzards that are going on up there and the 80-mile-an-hour winds. It's just been really cool. It's been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of good video and a lot of good, experiences all alone out in the woods with that quiet snow, like you said, Jared.
Yeah, getting stalked by bears and cougars.
Mountain lions. Yeah, that happens every once in a while.
All right, Shay, what's yours?
Man, I tell you, Jerry took mine with the snow one. That was probably one of the most memorable personal ones. But I think overall, and there's three of them, and the three that they all have in common, the things that they all have in common is flooding. So we had Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Florence, and we can't forget about the rain event of October 2015 and how impressive that was. I think that one tops my list simply because of the dynamics that were involved with it. You had three different things going on there with a major hurricane feeding this plume of moisture that just turned into a fire hose. And I lived it every day. I blogged it about every 3 hours. It was just one of the most intense things I've ever seen. I mean, just you look at on radar and you just watch that loop over and over. You just can't believe how that happened. And just watching how it just meandered up and down, just shot straight through to Columbia. It broke dams all the way inland, 200 miles. I mean, it just, boy, I tell you what, when you talk about watershed effect and weakening an area of the country, that one definitely did it, right? So Florence, again, another massive weakener of the entire eastern North Carolina half, which never really we got a chance to recover from Matthew. But Harvey with Texas, I mean, wow, what can you say? I mean, how many trillions of gallons of water in the upper atmosphere was able to precipitate down and create 5 feet of water is beyond me. It's crazy. You can think of the October flooding event for us with 2 feet. I mean, it's, we're used to seeing heavy rains here, but not over a 3-day period of heavy downpours like that. It just was intense. So for me, I'd say this decade, the most memorable experiences were with flooding.
I'll go right quick. Memorable experience, Tropical Storm Alberto back in 2017. Not because of anything major along the coast, but for inland North Carolina, I was working with emergency management in McDowell County. Had anywhere between 8 to 10 inches of rain. We had a flash flood emergency develop about 2 a.m. with the potential part of the dam was failing. And so I just had this sinking gut, like what happens if this thing completely fails and we just see widespread flooding. Thankfully, things stabilized. So I will always remember that moment. Evan, I agree with you. Seeing the Tipton tornado ranks up there. The White Christmas of 2010, we got over 14 inches of snow where I live And the last thing that's memorable, not really weather related, but science related, was experiencing totality from the solar eclipse a few years ago. That was that I think ranks the top because that was the coolest thing I've ever experienced in my life. So that's my memories.
Amen to that. That was a call.
Jim, I know you said Tuscaloosa. Anything else?
Well, I think about it, guys. We had two supers. We had the second super outbreak. We had Superstorm Sandy. Jared talked about how the dual pole came into play. But think about where we've gone with high resolution computer modeling and things like that. I mean, we've really done a great job, I think, in advancing our computer modeling and things like that. So certainly those two storm events stand out for me, especially Superstorm Sandy, because of the fact that we spent so much time trying to figure out if it was a hurricane or a mid-latitude cyclone that we lost the message. So as an enterprise, it was a tremendous lesson for us to go like, guys, why are we talking about this so much on air and on Twitter when we really just need to talk about impacts? Okay. How's it going to affect the people who meteorologically we can deal with what it was or what it is later, but let's talk about impacts. And I think that was really a great lesson for us in terms of how we get the message out. And it's interesting, Scotty, you mentioned the eclipse. I was in, Champaign, Illinois. I was right there at the Saluki Stadium, and literally within 30 seconds of totality, here comes this cloud sitting right over, and I never got to experience it. I could hear the cheers. I could hear the cheers outside the stadium, okay, with everybody experiencing it. But for those that did, it was definitely a moving experience, without a doubt.
Definitely so.
Can't wait to see what the 2020s have for us, guys.
For sure. All right, James, I'll let you close us out.
You want me to take it home?
Take it home, buddy.
All right. Well, I will segue off that last thought and compliment what Jim said about can't wait to see what the next decade holds. It's been an incredible decade. I think the most memorable weather moment, and there are many contenders here, but for me really stands out probably Hurricane Sandy. I was up on Long Island visiting my parents days before. They physically dragged me back to the airport in order to get me to leave because that's what parents do, to send me back to school after fall break there. I had a close friend who unfortunately lost a child during that event as they were preparing for the storm. And then, of course, the aftermath that the friends and families were continuing to clean up with. My own parents didn't get power back for quite some time. And on a personal note, I remember a couple weekends later, my dad had promised to go to a University of Georgia football game with me. And I don't know how he did it, but he managed to get himself from New York to Georgia and back again. I think all in the same day. He probably had one of the very first flights out because he wanted to hold that commitment. So that kind of stands out in my mind. But if on a more positive note and one of a less destructive nature, I will, of course, also mention that the thing that stands out when I think of weather in this decade is joining you guys and doing this show as we cross into our 6th year and just past that 300th episode milestone.
Wow.
Personally, it's a privilege to join each one of you either on air or behind the scenes here each week, and we thank everyone at home and to all of the great people in the weather community like Jim who come on to share their time and their experience and their stories with us. We are very grateful for that. We will be taking some time off for the holiday season, and we want to wish all of you and yours at home a very safe and happy holiday and new year. And it wouldn't be an end of a show if I didn't do a shameless promotion to, of course, remind you to download your favorite Carolina Weather Group podcast episodes on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts to take them with you for your holiday travel. There you go. We got to get that in somehow, right? But until we see you in 2020, thanks to all our panelists, Jim Cantore, and all of our guests this year for making it another very memorable year here at the Carolina Weather Group.